Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Inside Scoop with Alex and Jeff. I am Alex Dingman.
I'm Jeff Doss. Let's do this, guys. And if you notice right now, you're joining us live. We got another sport karate historian like us as well, and who's been in this game for just as long as I have, probably.
Longer.
Longer, yeah. Andrew Cabilan. How you doing, man?
Good, man. Everything's good up here, kind of.
Yeah.
Slowly.
Yeah, if you guys don't know, Andrew's in Canada in the Ontario province. So it's been a little different up there for him.
Very different.
Yeah. So, guys, we are, if you don't know, if you can't tell live, we are sponsored by the Virtual Fight Tour, and we are excited to have Virtual Fight Tour 9 on June 26th. Man, this is the most epic card ever. So everybody should be going on myeventex.com right now and getting your tickets, because we have Avery Plowden versus Oscar Coca Guzman. We have Bailey Murphy versus
Enrique
Latona. We have Tyson Ray versus Jason Latona, and we have Tyreek Saint versus Christian. What's the last name?
Rivas? Yeah.
Yes. So
these are all amazing fights.
These are all main events. You know,
they're all main events.
Yeah, they're all main events. It's going to be awesome. Looking forward to talking about that over the next few weeks and getting you guys pumped up for that event. So
Jesse was right when he said it. When he said, "Listen, if you don't get this pay-per-view, then you don't like sport karate." He's right.
It's true.
So,
it's true.
Because we were right when you said they're all main events. Like, if any one of those fights was on any other of the VFT cards, they would have been a main event. So This is pretty dang cool.
It was cool. And when we talked about it last week too, we mentioned a couple of the guys. We said Christian would be a good one on this card, and I was surprised. I'm really pumped up for that matchup. Tyreek versus Christian. That's going to be a great one. And then the one I thought about, Enrique versus Bailey, end up happening. We knew Enrique had to be on there if Jason was going to be on there. So,
well, I didn't know. Like, I thought yes, but I thought maybe they might be saving him for another card.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, it made sense. I like what Jesse did though. Like, his marketing is very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Like, if you look at the last VFT card, he was like, "All right, let's get the West Coast out here." Did a very, very good job doing that.
Yeah.
But you also want to look at it like, all right, who do I root for? And if you look at a lot of it, you're like, well, these guys are on this team, these guys are on this team, these guys are on that team. So there's a lot of different ones, but it's pretty clearly the US versus Latin America.
Yeah.
Which is super cool.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, I see what you did there.
Yeah.
I like that. Cool. That's really
cool
to get behind.
Man, look who's up here watching us, man. We haven't seen this guy's name in a long time. Mike Gibbs, what's up?
Woo! Mike Gibbs.
What's happening, brother? I hope, man. Mike, you got to get back in with your fist kicks and flicks. They got a good thing going, but I can't
wait till he joins in. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, too, Jeff.
It's going to be fun. Yeah, Mike just said, love Andrew. Been competing against him since we were kids. One of the best.
Awesome. Andrew, when did you start competing?
1991.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
1991.
Because I don't remember karate before you.
Oh, really?
Really? No, but that's totally true, since I didn't even start martial arts until 1992.
92.
There wasn't. We have to think about this. My whole martial arts life, Andrew Cabilan has been there. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And even when I really I had done a couple of national tournaments here and then this one there. But when I decided all right, I'm gonna do this thing. We were in the same division at one point. All right.
Yeah, we did American.
Yeah, but we
Yeah.
did, yeah, right. American Open,
Yeah.
right. We did that. And but you've had so many different areas as to where you've competed in, different divisions is the way you've competed. And I remember
Yep.
one time, and I was struggling, like, I want to do this, but man, I got to ask somebody. And I remember it might have been the Battle of Atlanta one year, and you were just nearby practicing your form as well. And I was like, all right, I'll trust what Andrew says. And I remember I asked you a certain thing, like, hey, what do you think about this? And you very honestly were like, nah, don't do that. Don't do it like that.
That's awesome.
But I looked around and I remember that. I'm looking around like, who do I even want to talk to? Because I remember in that moment I was struggling because I wanted to introduce something new. But I valued your opinion because of your longevity, because of your success, and because you're always there and you're winning and you're around, right? So whether or not it's you, you know. So that I just really, really thought that was pretty cool.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah. So we got a pretty cool topic we're going to talk about. And I'm sure we'll bring on Andrew again. Actually, we have another thing we want to bring Andrew on in the next month or two. So to talk about, as we've talked a lot of things, even last week, what we talked about with the traditional weapons. But this week, I want to bring another sport karate historian. Andrew's probably one of the only other people that remembers stuff as vividly and as much as both of us do. So, and he was around a lot of this as I was. But we're going to talk about John Valera, Mike Chat, Carmichael Simon, what many people, we can call them, some people call it the Trinity, some people call it the Great Triumvirate, some people call it, who knows, just the three-headed monster.
Right.
They are known as, really, for our generation and even the new generation, even though they may not know it, they're the ones that really change things, right?
Absolutely.
And some people only know them from their adults. And what really, to me, makes them stand out is that this started as juniors in like 88, right? 1988, when John moved up into black belt. Mike was in black belt. Carmichael was still an underbelt. He came into the thing, but he was watching them and training with these guys, going to the seminars, training under Charlie Lee, getting ready to compete in that. And so when you're talking about three competitors that became the top three junior forms competitors, and then they moved into adults and became the top three forms competitors. I mean, it's adult competitors. It's crazy. It doesn't happen that often, right?
Nope.
Right.
And again, it didn't stop. Even when their careers ended, their legacy and their hands on the sport continued, right? In a lot of ways. And we're going to talk about that. So this is what our main topic is today. We're going to dive into it, and who knows how long this will take, but we're going to have fun. And we would love for you guys to comment on what you think. And let's just go into the backgrounds of these three, and as it started as juniors, because for me, that's really an important thing, especially on their styles. It's really funny how they start as one thing, but when they get to adults and their legacy ended, they were known as almost the complete opposite. They all changed roles, which is something a lot of people don't really know, right? So John Valera is from Virginia. So he is originally under Eddie Thomas, who's an amazing kicker and sport karate forms and fighter in the 80s, late 70s and 80s. He was under that. He also did some private lessons with Charlie and Tom Wynn, some other guys as well. Yes, Bata area. Yep, that's awesome. Chris, all right, awesome. See, we got all kinds of people in here. And so that was where John was from. Carmichael is under the June Reed system. I'm trying to remember if he was at another school or not, but I know he was part of that, and he did private lessons under Charlie Lee. Mike
He also
Chad,
trained with Francis.
Eventually, yeah. Later on, yeah, he did a lot of stuff with Francis Pineda. Really helped him take it to the next level from his 15 to 17 years to the black belt years with the weight training and pretty much the stuff that people do now, their fitness training. Francis was doing back then with sport karate guys, having people wearing the weighted vest and stuff and doing. He had a Carmichael. He even had Ashley Lane back when she was like 10 doing the weighted vest, doing her form, and Jeff Durbin, those guys. So
she didn't need any weighted stuff. Her body was compact enough. You just got to add more weight to that.
That's right.
Like, come on, let her at least attempt to grow.
So Francis was ahead of his time on that. And then we have Mike Chat Radovat, who's under the Sharkey system, the AKA system, and really dived into that and was really pretty much one of the first of that group to end up being like a huge legacy that AKA and John Sharkey has, right?
That's a good point. That's true.
I don't know if he was the first champion under them, but he was one of the first big ones, right? And he's led this along the way.
Like
I don't think it exists the way it does without him. That's for sure.
Right. When I was competing with Mike, there was another guy. He was a traditional guy, Scott Danduran. I don't know if you remember him. He was winning Japanese Okinawan. He was an AKA guy, so he was part of that system too. But those were the two guys from AKA, Chat and Scott Danduran, that were actually around. People probably don't even know the other guy I'm talking about, but he was winning.
Right.
He's part of that Sharkey system that continues to winning to this day.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So I know. So as myself, people don't know my background. Let me just. John Valera was my competition instructor. So I went to his house. I saw all the videos and the different stuff, the trophies. Talked to him about where this kind of rivalry, but also just friendship too. Those guys were great friends. They were rivals as juniors and all the way up, right? So when it started, one of the first videos that I watched was the 1988 AKA Warrior Cup. Now, that was I'm watching that, and I'm watching Mike Chat, and this was in probably 94, 95. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, man, it looks a lot like Jimmy Pham. And so it's cool to kind of see how ahead of time, he was, right? And how Jimmy kind of followed certain things that these guys are doing. And just Mike at that time was known more for his showmanship and it was his showmanship, right? Mm-hmm. And then John, when he comes in 88, he doesn't win his title because back then it was PKO. He doesn't win his title, but he finishes the year winning the Diamond Nationals Grand Championship, right? And it's crazy just how he went from not really like he was losing to a guy named Jeff Sue, which a lot of people don't know. Jeff Sue ended up being the number one guy that year. Yeah, from California. And so he finishes second, but he wins several grands that year. So he already in 89, he's known as the top guy. He's ready to take over. In 89, John Valera is probably the top junior. And Carmichael is getting ready, right? Carmichael is getting ready to come up and do it. By 90, it's Carmichael, Mike, and John. You also have competitors. Let's mention Brian Ruth was a great forms of weapons competitor. He was in there.
Absolutely.
He was a lot younger than them. He was in the division.
Yeah,
down.
He was in the younger, but he was still in the grands against them. Yeah. It was all 17 under back then, guys. So, and then Bernadette is in there as well. In 88 and 89, there was a guy named John Saxon.
He's a VA guy too, right?
He's a Virginia guy. Yep. He did a lot of nunchucks and stuff. He was under Steve Woodward, who also produced people like Ida Henley and several other ones. And then you also have Seneca Luther, who's on his way out in 88, 89. So there's lots of people. David Oakley, 88 was his last, or 87, I think was his 87, 88 was his last year as a junior. So there's so many big names, but these guys are kind of working their way up, right? Mm-hmm. What people don't know is that Mike, even though he was known as a top junior, the only overall grand he won wasn't until like 1992 US Open as far as a triple A, because he won the AKA Warrior Cup several times, but it wasn't a AAA tournament.
No, you're right. It wasn't.
And we will get into that sometime too, how the AKA got shafted for many years as far as being a top tournament and how now they're arguably one of the top tournaments in NASCA.
Well, they were in and out of NASCA for a while, right?
Yeah.
Because they were in NBL until 2003. And then they were in and out of NASCA. I remember it was a NASCA event in the early 90s, and then it's somewhere in the middle.
Double A. Always
Yeah.
double A. And there
Always.
wasn't many double A's back then. It was
No.
just like 2. It was their tournament, and then Jim Lanchard's tournament, who was always the qualifier for either WACO or WKA.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how you look back at that and see, you know, those things. But yeah, so the juniors, so let's just talk about the way they were, right? John Valera, as a junior, was probably known as probably one of the better kickers, which a lot of people don't realize. He had an awesome sidekick. He was known as the cleanest competitor, and he was probably the most choreographed, right? When you talk about Mike actually had the most flair. He had great kicks, but his were more flashy kicks at that time as a junior, because he had the little floppy foot going some, but he did different things. He did the you know, inner circle kicks. He did different stuff like that, right? And Carmichael, of course, was really fast, but he was also creative, and he was the first person to combine soft style and open forms. In 1990, when he did his Can't Touch This song form, he had open forms, and he ended with soft style, which no one had really seen before, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that, on his first year, he won several overall grands. And it was either him or John winning grands in 90 and even into 91. So it's really interesting how those roles kind of changed as time goes on, right? John became the fast one, right? Carmichael became the one doing all the creative
He was
things
the extreme
and
martial arts guy.
extreme
He was the one who
part.
made it extreme.
And Mike actually ended up being more of the choreographer and the clean one. So it's really interesting, or in people's, you know, everyone has different opinions on it, but people, they change roles. But Carmichael's talked about this several times too. At that time, people were so pumped up to watch the juniors. You know, that
absolutely. I always look forward to those grands, because you have to understand, they never had runoffs back then. And each competitor was only allowed to do one division.
Exactly. That's another thing.
You saw the best of the best who never competed against each other during the day. You don't get that now, because everybody's competing each other during the day, and they're eliminating each other, and you're not getting the best. Okay, you're getting the person who's winning the most divisions. You know, we'd like to see now. I would like to see more different competitors for any division, for that matter. So that was the good thing about juniors, that you had, you know, 7 or 8 good people, because they all won different divisions, right? So you got a little bit of everything. You know, even if you look with the younger kids like Cody Gilboa, Cody Gilboa, you know, those, you know, Justin Margado, right? These are all guys you saw on stage. They never won the grands, but they were something different. They added something, some flair that just made things a little bit more exciting than what I see now. Right.
And like, even like Guy Burkett, as a young junior, you know,
choreographed.
Jimmy Pham, before he became the top guy, he was underneath those guys, you know, working his way up. So these three, and you know, when I posted this today, of course, everyone would be like, oh, that's great, but you can't forget these guys. Well, we're not forgetting anyone. We're just choosing to talk about these guys because these guys had a great influence. And again, it's not just these three guys were doing something great as adults at those times when, yes, David Douglas was there as well. But who else came from juniors being the top ones? Like 3 guys all the way up to that. There may be some, but, you know, and that's the thing. And it's just the way that they evolved and they changed the sport, right?
So you know what I started thinking about this as? Just from what you mentioned. And because, you know, I'm an NBA guy. I love basketball. I started thinking about this because I was listening to, oddly enough, an NBA podcast, and I was thinking about, they were talking about the 1996 NBA draft, which is probably the best NBA draft. People talk about 1984. People talk about 2003. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? That's what Carmichael, John, and Mike are.
Right.
They're that group.
Allen Iverson, Ray Allen, and Kobe Bryant. They were all in the same draft together.
Sort of. Yeah.
No, they were. They weren't.
They weren't. They actually all came out in 3 separate years. But
no, hold on. John Valera and Mike Chat came out in
the same 93.
Yes.
They came out in 93, but yeah.
I'm talking about the draft. But I see what you're saying. Yes, they did come out like that. But I'm using that in references because we saw them all as juniors,
Yeah.
and then they did kind of all end up in the adults together. But once they were there, it was like, all right, now we got what we were here to see.
That's an important point there, because in the 1995 Mile High, because
Yep, here we go.
1995 was the first year that Carmichael was an adult.
Yep.
I was standing beside Coach Don Rodriguez, and he just said, "No, it's great to see exactly what you guys have said. These three competitors that compete against each other as juniors, now they're competing against each other in adults, and they're just battling it out."
Yeah.
So it's just a great progression that they've seen within 5 to 7 years during that time.
And that's what everyone was pumped up about. Like, I'll never forget that tournament. And not even just because of, like, none of them really did their best form, but it was just the idea that they were there, And I remember,
were there. Yeah, absolutely.
And so you remember talking to Don. I remember talking to Jimmy Pham, and both of us were just excited. We're like, can you wait for this? Like, we've been waiting for this for years, like, because John, his first adult tournament was the end of 93 Diamonds. Right?
Yeah.
And Mike was actually competing that year. So actually, Mike's a little older. Then John just moved up. He wasn't really competing much because he was in college playing tennis. Yeah. And so he was starting to get back in, right?
There's a trivia question for you.
Right.
I didn't know this. Say that again. He's a tennis player?
He was a tennis player. Him and Carmichael were tennis players. Like at tournaments, they would play against each other, and I just watched.
Shut the front door.
I played tennis too, but they were actually good.
Yeah,
he was in college. They'd be good.
Yep.
They were really good.
So Mike actually had more. He got the, let's say, adult success before anyone else, right? He started first, but
he started first, but he didn't win until the U.S. Open that year.
Right.
That's his tournament, man. It's like,
yeah, that was his tournament.
Yeah, but you know what though? Mike was getting his he was getting handed to him with Chris Casamassa and Hero. He was a third placer, consistent.
Yeah, and then it got to like in '94 where him and Hero were going back and forth.
Yeah.
Mike would win his weapons division though a lot, but Hero was winning. Hiro Koto was winning the music. It was musical at that. Yeah, musical forms division. So
993.
No, you're right.
993 is Chris Casamassa.
Yeah, Chris Casamassa. But I'm talking about 94.
Yeah, 94.
Yeah. So it's crazy because the different things, and we'll go back and forth because we don't forget stuff. And if we do, we're like, wait a minute, no, that's wrong. So hope you guys can keep up with us.
Sorry about that. This one.
You know what? It's easier because I was there and I saw it in front of me, and I don't forget stuff like that. And at that time there weren't that many divisions for me to remember. It's not like now where I'm trying to remember who won Japanese Okinawan and then who won traditional challenge.
Yeah.
Right. So
exactly. It's very different.
It's very different. The culture is very different in terms of me remembering stuff, to be honest with you.
And even the way that they come up, right? They come up into to adults. Mike, I believe, is doing musical. John moves up and he starts doing American. And actually, his first tournament, he got second to Ho Young. Ho Young Pak which is different. Most people think he's a soft style guy, but he was doing the American division. He was winning it that year in '93 a lot. Yeah. And the first tournament, John comes into really competing as an adult in '94, compete nationals. He loses to Larry Lamb. And so Larry's the kind of the guy was doing that, but he was kind of first and second, but he's Ninja Turtle guy, right? So he's on Paul Mitchell. So these guys are going. Carmichael is finishing up his last junior year, and he's trying to get the Triple Crown for the third year in a row, which would be a record, or he would actually tie a record. David Oakley has that record of 3 Triple Crowns in a row. We've talked about this before. Yep. He loses, to Kingston Ing that year when he does the Crow at Diamond Nationals. So Carmichael did a lot of new things that year. He did the 720 that year. He was the first person to do the Mortal Kombat song, and then everyone else took it. Yep. So lots of things like that. But when we come into 95, because really this is when it just takes up, everything's different, right? Mike is the season one, and he's really in his mind, he's ready to take over. Mike does start winning some weapons grands though during this year. But
now, hang on though. At this point, Mike and Andrew jump in at any point and say, "Nah, Alex, you don't know what you're talking about." At this point, Mike had started to change really the way that he approached his forms, and he started to create the system of the lines and especially the kicking and the way that he approached his commas. As soon as he really started winning and started doing it this way, like the rest of the country got behind it. It was like, all right, this is the weapon to do. I'm going to do it the way you do it. I've never seen it like
too.
this.
But 95 was also the year that the generation prior to mine started exiting. So that's when Mike Bernardo, who was winning that division all the time, that's when he stepped out.
He
so
left.
a lot of people were stepping out, with David McCumber being the last one to leave in 98. So it was there was a lot of transition during that time. So that's when when those guys started to leave, that's when this next generation started to move in and start to win. Right.
Yeah,
so
because I remember
that's a big part of it.
Wasn't it? It was Battle of Atlanta '95 where John and Mike both beat Mike Bernardo in the division.
Yes.
And John actually won the weapons grand at that tournament.
Yeah.
And then Carmichael won the forms grand. So it was really that big turnover, you know. Again,
that one tournament.
Really that one tournament.
That
really
one
changed
tournament in the dome. Yeah. That was, you got to keep in mind those days, the weapons division, the men's hard style weapons was 50 competitors deep.
Yep.
Yeah.
5-0.
5-0.
It
2
was insane.
seeds.
Yeah, only 2 seeds.
2 seeds.
Oh.
And see, Battle at the time was in April, so it was in the beginning of the year. It was the first real big event.
It was the first big tournament.
Yeah.
That was the first AAA tournament.
So who were those 2 seeds? I got it.
Those 2 seeds were John and Mike. Because Bernardo was an unseeded. No, sorry. No, yeah, I'm right on that. Yeah. Because that was
Mike didn't go to compete or Mile High that year.
Yeah.
And so they both went to those. So yeah. But yeah, man, it's crazy. And so again, 95, John goes to Korean. Carmichael is doing American, and Mike Chat's doing musical. They separate on purpose, you know. That they have a little.
You're only allowed to do one.
Yeah, you only got to do one.
Back then.
And everything's it's a completely different mindset than now. You know what I mean? You could have that. You know, we've had 3-headed type people before who all did it, but sometimes they would eliminate each other. Sometimes, they would just be competing during the division, but they wouldn't always make it to the grands. So it's a little different. When you have let's think years, Matt Emming, Mark Canizzato, and maybe even later on Micah Cards or whatever. You have those guys. You have. I mean, there's so many different ones. In NBL, one or 2 years, it was me, Daryl, and Josh Durbin who were battling for every division. There's different things. So during this time, we're talking about 95. As far as this didn't only change NASCA. People in NBL were watching these guys. They were knowing about them. But as far as NBL, Andrew, because you were competing some as well in NBL at that time, who would you say? I don't know if they had a 3-headed monster, but they had 2 or 3 big guys.
During that time?
Yeah, I would say Ramir.
Chad Mason was number 1. That was the John Valera of NBL.
I would say Chad Mason and Ramir Mosquito to me.
Yeah.
As far as a little bit
Ramir transitioned over to NASCA in 96, though.
Yeah, but he was doing both, though.
He was doing both.
Yeah, and so he was still more successful in NBL.
Yeah.
And even in the early 90s, it was Gafar Adam, Joey Ueda, Hero. Those 3 guys, and so there was many different ones, and of course we're forgetting probably the most dominant one, Butch Tokasala.
Yeah.
So there were guys that were doing big things there as well, and in there, but Mike would come over and do demos at Super Grands, or David Douglas would do demos. Well, actually, he won in 95.
Seminars.
95. He won 95 as a wild card.
Yep. So there is that cross, and especially with those guys moving to California around that time. I think 95, 96 was when Mike moved to California. Later on in 99 was when John moved. But again, guys, sorry if we've lost you with all the history stuff. But 95
I'm on the edge of my seat.
The first year that those three really competed, and went head at each other.
Mm-hmm.
And Carmichael won the Triple Crown pretty much, you know.
Yeah, he won all three.
All three, which again is Battle of Atlanta, U.S. Open, and Diamonds. But he also won the Bluegrass, which really he won all four, right?
Yeah.
So at that time, I think the only thing was when we did the that time Atomics Grand Slam was happening, right? And Atomics Grand Slam was trying to get sport karate into Olympics, but the first thing was to get them into the Pan Am Games, right? So they did Battle of Atlanta, Bluegrass Nationals, and Diamond Nationals. And I believe Mike Chat won a good amount of those grands for that. So, you know, they were, which at that time, it was only the top competitors. You had to win like first or second in your division to even go to those events, which they happened the Sunday after the tournament, right? So the Sunday after Bluegrass, we were still competing. All of us were competing again to do another thing, you know. So, you know, we love karate, but hey, we love it even more. Let's compete more and more. So that was a whole another thing that we were doing. So there was lots of competition going on, lots going on. In '96, Carmichael's kind of almost out of it, right? He comes back to a few tournaments.
His last one was '96 Bluegrass.
Yep.
Yeah, I saw that. And he put the Metro uniform back on.
No, it was a Junior red uniform.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah,
that's what it was.
But he did do Metro like 1 or 2 tournaments that year.
The first two, yeah.
Yeah. And then
but he wore a Junior red uniform at the '96 Bluegrass. And he competed in musical.
Yep.
And I think he lost to Mike, I think.
No,
he didn't win that one.
I think he slipped.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
I was there at that one. I think he slipped.
He did. He lost to Mike at Ocean State as well, I believe.
And he cut his hair.
Maybe he won.
He had all that beautiful long hair.
Yeah, that's right. Because
then you get in there, and then he cut it.
Yeah. So '96 really turned into where it was more of John and Mike back and forth at each other, right?
It was solidified at that point. It's
those two. Yeah. And Carmichael was just ready to, you know, he did it. Like he dominated who else their first year. I mean, there may have been some now, but at that time, their first year as an adult to win all four of those big four, like it was crazy, right? And to innovate at the same time. So, you know, we're talking about doing the 720. We're talking about doing the first big combo of the 540 hook, B-twist, hook, aerial, right? So go ahead, Andrew. I'll stop talking.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
But you know, he did a lot of great things during that. After this, though, really during this was when Mike kind of started coming to his own as far as the choreography, right? He had to where the songs, you know, he was hitting the beats, you know, and so he kind of was taking it back a little bit to that John Fournette style. A lot of this, what people don't know, he was competing. He was doing shows at the Buddha Gala in Germany, I believe?
Yeah.
Or France?
Buddha Gala, I believe, in because no, France is a different one. France was the Bercy Festival.
That's right. Bercy Festival was that. And then, yeah, you're right. Buddha Gala was in Germany. So he was doing both of those, right? And John Fournette actually suggested him to go to that. So he was going there, and John just kept telling him, you got to be a little bit more choreographed. You got to be a little bit more choreographed. And everyone's like, man, this is really choreographed. You know, he's doing the Street Fighter song. He's doing the Move It song.
Street Fighter song of just the sound effects from the video game.
Yeah.
For every move he did.
Yeah.
So
even like 3 other people to ever do something like that.
Right. So the choreography really picked up for him. And I think, and then he even took into like adding the
wizard.
The wizard suit from
WMAC Masters.
Right. Yeah. Right. The first time he did that was at Bluegrass, and it was kind of like a downgraded version. And he slipped all over the place because the uniform was coming off, and he was
stepping on it. Big baggy uniform.
Yeah, and it was funny. But once he got it all figured out, and he did it at U.S. Open, it worked out, right? And then again, John was taken up with the Zombie song, and just at the end of '95 when John came back,
his first grand that year was wasn't it
compete, I think, in '96,
95, 96. Well, I think it was the Capitals. I think no. I'm trying to remember now. Because I know there were a lot of tournaments in '96 where John was slipping.
Right.
Remember, he would do he would do the 720 and then he couldn't land it.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought he won at Cabilan. I mean, at compete, but I'm not sure. But
'96, yeah, I'm trying.
I know in '97 he did because he did the double.
Because I don't think I went that one. I didn't go to the '96.
Yeah, so he did the double 720. There's just a lot of things that was happening around then. But yeah, like the music, he had the zombie song. So this is what's cool about then is like all of us remember these songs and we think of these forms, right?
Right.
When you hear Close to You, you think, of Carmichael Simon, when you hear Zombie, you think of John Valera.
The good thing about that zombie song, Mackenzie Emery brought it back on in our last year of competing, right? So I was like, wow, that's John.
Yeah.
And, when you think about her lineage, going back to John's influence, she's part of that, right? So
because
that was
Rudy
cool.
And stuff,
But how many people actually know that? I think it was only our generation. The kids don't know that.
Correct.
Well, and then the other thing that you were saying, Jeff, when you said, when you hear these songs, you think of those forms because nobody would use Zombie.
Right.
Even if you could get a hold of that music, you would never do that.
It'd be biting.
People would look at you like you had two heads.
Or trying to find a version that you could use because really the original version is really slow, right?
Yeah.
I remember sitting in the car with John during this time and he was like, listen to this. This is what I'm gonna start doing. I'm like, wait, what? I'm only like 11, 12 years old. I'm like, I thought this song was slow. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, I'm out.
And so I remember
before anybody else.
Yeah. A lot of things like that, man. I saw the first standing side swipe before anyone, and John was just doing it on the grass. Like things that people just didn't do. So it's just crazy. But yeah. One more person, though, that needs to be brought up during this time, because he won several big events. He won the Battle of Atlanta a lot, was Kim Do. Kim Do was one as a junior when people want to say the three-headed monster, but Kim actually won several grands where Mike didn't. He was winning the younger.
Yeah, 91. Musical. Yeah, 91 was didn't Kim Do win all three?
I don't know if he won all three, but I know he won Diamond. He won.
Because 91 is, I believe he did win Battle, and I'm pretty sure he won US Open because he's the one that brought in the sequin gi, right?
Yeah.
So, the thing is, he was always there, but he didn't compete at every single tournament. No. I think that's why he never really made the big impact when he was a junior.
And when he moved up to adults was way later, right?
Yeah.
So that was where he didn't come up with these guys. He kind of, once these guys were gone, then he kind of came up. Well, him and David, got big in 97, 98. And then, but after that was really when Kim Do really took it to the next
level. These are West Coast dudes.
Yeah.
They got a level of cool that's like above everybody else.
Yeah.
Like David Douglas is like the Lenny Kravitz of karate. Like Lenny Kravitz just kind of walks around like he's just cooler than everybody else. That's David Douglas.
That's so true. It's so true. But getting into, we're talking about 97, I think Mike had an injury. Carmichael was gone. That was John's year.
That was John's year.
Yeah.
John dominated. It pretty much ended at, he won the Diamonds in 96, and then it just kind of carried on. Yeah. And he started doing the two kick 720, Yeah. Some people say double 720. I think.
One of my favorite tricks.
Oh, yeah, me too. And,
the only person that was that got in his way was Anthony DeMarco.
Right.
Right on.
Yep. Anthony DeMarco, I believe he won the 2000 Diamonds, but John was already gone.
Well, no, he won the 98 Diamonds.
Was it 98? Yeah.
Yeah, John messed up. John slipped in the runoffs. Okay. And Anthony won the overall. So, that was a year, I think. And then either that year and the next year, Javik was in grands and stuff too. Javik Grok.
Yeah. He was in 97. Javik was in 97.
So
Anthony won in both 98 and 2000.
Yeah.
So I mean,
2000 is when he stepped out. So that's how I remember it.
Yeah, he stepped out. So again, 98 actually, it started out with Mike really it was Mike, John, and David throwing their best stuff.
Yeah.
The first tournament of the year, Mike Chat and John Valera tie 3 times at the Compete Nationals.
Mhm.
And it's crazy. And it's one of the most epic things I've ever seen. You know, John did it the first time he did the double leg, right? Carmichael's not there, but Mike is probably the most consistent and strongest that he's ever been. He did the first 720 into a split, lots of things like that just were different, and he was just clean.
Mike started to trick a lot more during that period.
He was doing more combos, I would say.
Yeah.
And then David just didn't have a good tournament, but then the next tournament he came out and he just killed it, right?
Mhm.
And probably his most epic and legendary forms happened during this year, during '98.
That's when he did all the ones to reggae songs.
Yeah, and he did the
Heck
double
yeah.
leg spin hook double leg, right?
Yeah.
Which is still one of the coolest combos and most swagged out combos there is.
Yep.
And so, you know, it becomes where David kind of takes Carmichael's spot, right? But it's still different, you know.
It didn't have the same feel.
No,
Like
no,
watching the grands, I was excited, but it wasn't the same excitement that I would have back in '95 when I knew it was Carmichael, Valera, and Chat in the same grands. Like I
Correct.
always look forward to that,
yeah.
right? So, yeah, that's the thing with after 96 or so, it was just pretty much Mike and John. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, we were on that transition phase of that style, not necessarily going away, but where the base was karate. Really, by the end of '99, when John left at the end of '99 and he retired, everything was different.
Yeah,
The
totally
world
different.
changed. The martial arts world
Everything.
changed after his retirement.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Everything
everything
was
kind of
different.
came together at the same time, but I mean, that was like that moment.
Yeah, where
That was-
all the top competitors were
nothing
doing
was the
round
same.
off flash to the corner, where everyone was doing double legs, where everyone was doing B12, you know, which I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it changed. Where John, Mike, and Carmichael, the base was karate, and then they expanded off of it, right?
Mhm.
Correct.
Where it was a little different. And
all
some
three,
people,
all three of them made a mold that our current competitors are following, right? As
Correct.
Carmichael pointed out, you know, he created the blueprint for an extreme form. And the
Yep.
same token, when it comes to presentation, and with John Valera in particular, he was the first one that introduced the 40-second form.
yeah,
Right,
yeah,
in my eyes,
exactly.
because
Yeah,
before, prior to 94, even when they were juniors, a lot of John's original form was 2 minutes and like 45 seconds back when he was a junior, when he was wearing the red top and black
when he
pants.
was doing legend.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was doing legend form. It was through Tchaikovsky and
Yeah.
dun, dun, dun,
That was almost a 3-minute form, and then he condensed it. And then as an adult, he introduced the 40-second form, where you had 40 seconds of action. Right? Now, what are the forms like now with most of our juniors? They're 40-second.
They're 40 seconds. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he did
40
that.
40 seconds of martial arts, 30 seconds of music, fixing the uniform, walking in.
Yeah. Well, and he even created the long intro too, I would think.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Especially with his final performance. I mean, that music is going,
absolutely.
and he's walking around and like, where's he?
The
at?
blonde
Everyone's
hair
like,
with the
"Where's
white
he at?"
I
hair.
heard the
Yeah.
music. You're right. You hear the music, and nobody knows where the heck he's at.
Yeah.
The music's just playing, and we were like, "Where's this guy at?"
He's behind the
He's like
judges. Actually,
a block
you know?
away.
Yeah.
You like see him walking like from the rafters down. You're like, what? Aren't you supposed to be on the stage? Your music's going. And it was like, I don't know. It was like a 6-minute performance.
But so like you know, you have all these guys have won diamond rings, you know, Carmichael and Mike, I think have won one, maybe I think Mike
Carmichael
just
won one.
Yeah.
And I don't think
I think Mike won one.
Mike Chad only won a weapons one though.
Yep. And so, but John won what, 5 or 7, which
no, it wasn't 7.
5. Yeah, it's 5.
Because he won 99, 95. No, he didn't win 95.
No, 96,
He won
97.
He won 97.
99.
I think he won 3.
He won 1 in 98, and then he won 2 in 99.
Yeah.
He has 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was counting the forms ones.
Yeah. The forms were 3, and then he won 2 weapons ones.
Correct.
So 5. And so, you know, these guys have won so much, but after that, you know, Mike goes on to start XMA, right? And ATA isn't even the same because of Mike Chat. Let's be honest with that. Like they're a completely different organization. They have the XMA. They have great competitors. They have an awesome organization because of Mike. And the other infrastructure they have. John starts Team Valera. He has great competitors that go on. Rudy Rainen being the most highest one of that.
James
Mike also had Team Chat.
Right, you're right. Yeah, in '98,
Team Chat International.
We had Team Chat International. And he starts the Team Chat camps, which really was probably the first of those camps that really became. So that's
the US
something else.
Open.
Yeah, and so that was a whole another thing. With the Team Chat camps, the chat camps. But John goes on. He moved to California, I think the end of '98, maybe, and he goes in to do acting school, right? To film school, to become an actor, but he becomes now one of the top stunt coordinators, stunt choreographers there is out there.
He
right?
pretty much owns the action industry. Like everything that's coming out, he has something to do with it.
He does, right? Yeah. It's either him or Hero.
Hero's doing a lot.
Hero's doing a lot. A lot
He's
of
doing
these
the
guys,
Karate Kid, right? He's the one doing Karate Kid.
Yeah,
or I mean,
Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah. You had the sleeveless uniforms that Mike did. Mike was doing. John was doing that before as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then Carmichael, he goes another realm, and he goes into the computer world, whatever, and then comes back and does the dancing and kind of gets involved with Luke Kicks and those guys, and then it's just really become a great ambassador for the sport, a mentor for a lot of people.
Yep.
He is someone who's always just trying to find different ways to help. And so all three of these guys still give back to the sport. John gives a lot of opportunities to sport karate guys that are going into the film industry,
Yep.
And so does Mike. Mike has a place where people can learn how to do that, and if you need a place to maybe teach or do private lessons, he had his school doing that, so there's so many different things that these guys continue to give back, but there wouldn't be, the Matt Emmings, the Mark Canizatos, Micah Carn, those guys without that legacy, and the Steve Taradas, Anthony Murata, Will Valentine. That was kind of the next one that could have been, that group.
I thought about that so much in the moment, and I'm like, ooh, because you were right on. Because Anthony Murata was like Mike Chat 2.0.
Yeah.
Right.
Thing is, the transition year I think was '98 when guys like Daniel Sterling started coming out.
Yeah.
Because that was the beginning of that generation.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
Because
juniors.
And even Atkins too in '97.
Yeah.
And when he started really picking up, 97, 98, everything.
Those guys couldn't really do anything yet because John was still winning, right? So, but that was the beginning of that generation.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you think of '99, 2000 are so crazy years, which we talked about this before in our 2000 episodes where we pretty much broke the year 2000 down to like 2 episodes because, you had the emergence of someone like John Sue, you had Jimmy Pham doing his first and only adult year. All of this was coming out from '99, Jeff Ikejiri from '99 and 2000, just there's so much, guys, that we can talk about that maybe you don't know or even thought you cared to know, but it's important and it's where our lineage comes from. And we can learn things and implement things from those guys, go back and watch, go back and watch the forums and the way they're set up.
Well, just everything, not even the actual form itself, but the presentation part. Even like as a traditional competitor, I would watch someone like John and go, what is he doing to capture the audience? What is he doing to capture the judges? I would always take a look at what he's doing, and then I would emulate that in traditional. So what these guys are doing, it applies to every competitor, not just the CMX people.
Correct.
Right. So especially the newer generation, you got to factor that in. Watch these people in terms of what they did and why they were winning back then, and why what they were doing then is also making people win now. Right.
Right.
So
It is. You're right. The presentation, for me, it was always the eyes, right? Like John had those eyes. Oh, sorry. He had those eyes that kind of just, and just the way he controlled the audience with his head, his body movement.
Yep.
Right. Taking his time until it was time not to take his time. Right.
Yeah.
All of those things, and then really the pauses and stuff that Mike did, he was probably really good at the poses and being like, hey, this is going to be a good picture moment. Right.
Yeah.
Like, and he was great at that.
Yeah. He was the picture perfect guy.
Yeah. And so it was really cool. But I mean, I'm so blessed to be able to see all three of these guys kind of be mentored in some way by all of them in many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think look up more stuff, guys. Ask people that are under them. Message me about that. Message Andrew, Alex. Talk to people under the Sarkey system.
Just some homework for the any younger viewers out there. Just go into YouTube 1995 Bluegrass.
Yeah,
that one grand championship with all three of them will give you a perspective in terms of what you're doing now. Right. And understanding the past will help you understand what you're doing now and what you're going to do in the future. Because like I said, Carmichael's form in that 1995 Bluegrass is the blueprint to what the open people are doing now. But same token, you look at John and Mike, what they're doing now is relevant to what we're doing in present forms competition. So again, those are the type of people that you need to study. And even now, going back, I know we're talking about Cabilan and Simon, but the bow people, they need to study people like Mike Bernardo. Why is Jackson Rudolph the way he is? Oh, because he trained with Lauren, who trained with Casey, who trained with Bernardo. By the way, that was the thing that was the interview for today as well. It's a nice little thing people should look at too. Like I said, in order for you to understand what's going on now, you got to look at the past, right?
Right.
So also do your do your homework. Everybody's hearing the phrase, Flash is trash without good basics. Where'd that come from? You have to know where that came from.
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff that. I
kind of agree.
I don't.
Well, I think I understand what he's saying. I think there's still ways to do it where you don't have to actually do the my name is this, my name is this.
Yeah.
You can still have an intro without, there's still that presentation without even saying whatever you got to say.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeff, you kind of hinted on something, and you were saying like, you were impacted by all of them, like in different ways, and kind of mentored by them in different ways. So there was a guy I was tight with that was, way better than me at the time, and the mid and late 90s. His name was Mike Hasse. You probably
Mike.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
He trained with Mike. I know Mike.
So what Mike did is he was like, he identified Chat, and he was like, I want to be like that. And so what he did is he hit him up, and he's like, I want to train with you. He's like, all right, when do you want to do some training? And he's like, I'll be there as long as you'll let me. And he like went and lived with him for like a month, right? So he goes out to California and lives with him. And then he comes back a 100% completely different martial artist. Like, I'm like, what are you? Completely different. So he comes back. And so for all of us at the time, we were like, Mike's got this. He's got the blueprint. We're going to do what Mike Hasse was saying. So we're like, he went and he trained with Mike Chat. Hasse knows whatever Hasse says, that's what you got to do. So we're like, all right, let's just do that. But that's what it was like. If you could train with somebody who was like basically touched by one of them, you felt like you were next to him. And that's kind of what we felt like. But Andrew, you were actually with them, competing with them in the time, in the moment.
Yep.
Dude, fill us in. Give us some stories. Give us some tidbits.
You know what? It was just really those three in particular. Like they were just very They just motivated me to be a better competitor, right? I mean, I only won once against each one of them. I beat Mike at mile high 94 in the Grands. He slipped
Yep.
though.
Yeah.
95 competes I won, but that was Carmichael's first tournament as an adult. And then John I beat at Capital Classics in 94, but that was also he was transitioning that year too. So
Yeah.
there was a reason for that. But like I said, it was always great competition because those guys were just that good.
Yeah.
Right. And
94, man, you were killing. You had you did all the freaking jump outside crescents.
well, that's the thing that and I did my
All of them.
when I mentioned to people, what did I do that separated myself from those three? I didn't have the flexibility of a chat. I wasn't as fast as Carmichael, and I wasn't as clean as John, but I was crazy. Right. So, what did I do? I took, back in NBL, there's a guy named Abdul Love, and he started doing these multiple jump spinning crescent kicks, right? No one was doing that in NASCAR.
Right.
Like, what? I'm going to take it a step further. And I started doing that too, as well, and that's what put me in the top two and, in first place in some places. But then in my first full year as an adult, I was listening to Jamie Webster, who's doing something different too. Right? If you remember, he was doing all the keep up stuff, right?
He was the guy when Richard Brandon got hurt, right? Because really, Richard Brandon was winning a lot of the Grands then. 93, 94. But when he got hurt, Jamie was the one that kind of took over.
Yeah.
Hero won 1 or 2, but it was Jamie that was really, he added the breakdancing part into it. He did some cool things. So, and he had good, strong martial arts, I would say. He was really strong.
It was a nice little, because he was a Kempo stylist, right? So even his open form, he had a mix of karate and Kempo. It was a very unique style because no one else was doing what he was doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, guys. Even though there are these 3 people, there were other ones that did great things. But guess what? They had to stand out. They didn't copy these guys, right?
No, you couldn't. You could not.
And that's the problem that I feel like people do is they want to copy what those top people do and learn from that. Go your whole other way, Oh, Stuart Kwan, that's all.
What we got to do, right?
Stuart Kwan, Ramir Mosquito was doing that. He did. I think the most I saw him do was 5. Maybe he did 6 once. All right, what was the most jump out crescents you did at a tournament?
Me?
Yeah.
10.
Stop.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when I saw you do it at Mile High. You did I think you did 10 during the day. Did you do 10 at night? I don't remember.
I did only 5 at night.
Yeah, because you were on. So Mile High was at this theater, right? And it was the hardest stage.
It was a hard floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was like a Broadway production.
Yeah, it was. It was funny.
Yeah, Mile High was a nice setup, honestly, and it was my first adult win. And then that was an interesting one because it was the American division against me and Larry Lamb. It was just us two. And when I won that division, it was pretty scary because it was my first adult win, number 1. Number 2, people didn't take to it very well at first.
Right.
Yeah, they were very upset.
Yeah, I understand. That's how I felt that year too, because I was a junior, but I was beating Jennifer and Ebony and Cowman, people that have been competing for a while, and no one really knew who I was. So it felt that way too.
Yeah, because I don't know, were you on a team back then? Because I wasn't.
No, I wasn't on a team until
that's it.
96.
That's it right there.
When Elite picked me up. So yeah.
They looked at you like you weren't supposed to win.
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, it's back then there were only 3 teams. I came into the sport and they were only 3 teams. There was DKT Force 1, Paul Mitchell, and East Coast / Metro. Yeah, that was it, right? And to make a team back then, it was a pretty big deal. It was news. Now you have 100 teams. Everybody's on a team.
Right.
So yeah,
you don't need someone on your back to win those guys. You can do it without.
Yeah, absolutely.
So. But I've done before. I've taken the team name off of my back because I felt like there was no point. It just went on my own.
I'm trying to wrap my head around 10 jump spins in a row.
I know, nuts, right? Yeah,
that's a lot. Ultimately, you know what I think we need to do, Jeff?
Yeah,
we need to get Carmichael, John, and
I know, and Mike all on one. That's what I hope we get to. Which I think we will eventually.
We're gonna
it's hard to schedule.
It's hard to schedule, John. John's always out of the country. But But yeah, man. So,
Carmichael will make it happen. Come on, Carmichael. Make it happen.
Carmichael will help me get it all set up. So yeah, man. Thanks, Andrew, for talking about this. Because again, this is something you and I are very passionate about, and I think it's an important thing. So we're at an hour. You want to go into 10, 15 minutes on the topic that we were talking about?
I do.
Oh, the Battle of Atlanta thing?
Yeah.
So,
sure.
On that.
So, we have a tournament coming up, and they're doing an overall type thing, which is cool, where they're going to have a men's overall forms of weapons grand. They're going to have a women's overall forms of weapons grand. They're going to have a women's sparring grand and a men's sparring grand. At first, it looks great. It's for an extra $500. I think it's a cool idea, and the concept is great. Some people were like, hey, even I think, Andrew, you said every tournament needs to do this.
Yeah.
So my only issue is that we've talked so much about why don't they let people do multiple divisions, right? Why are you stuck at 30 and up? Or why can you only go down to this or that? I feel like this is a way to keep people at that. I feel like this is a way to keep people at your age group. I've talked to someone else that's on Maine about this, and he agrees with me. Well, actually, he's the one that even sparked in my head.
I don't disagree with you, and I'll mention why. Because like right now, by allowing, technically, you should be able to compete in as many divisions as you qualify for. However, that poses a disadvantage to the people that are not, let's say, 30.
30, yeah.
For example, if you're 18, you can only compete 18. But a person who's 50 technically can compete in 18, 30, 40, and 50, which isn't fair to the 18. So,
but in 18, there's more divisions. There's more splits in 18.
Right.
Divisional splits.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, there's more divisional splits in 18, so you actually get more options to compete. In 30, there's musical, there's creative, and there's traditional. That's it.
But if you're a 50-year-old competitor, who's not to say that you can do every single one in the 18, every single one in 30, every single one in 40, every single one in 50?
You're right. You're true.
When you have that grand championship structure, right, you do keep the people in their age group, which, yeah, like I said, I agree to a certain extent. The thing I like about it is inclusive of the senior competitors, because right now there's nothing for senior competitors that puts them in the spotlight, except for Diamond Nationals, right? And they're the only one that does it.
Yeah, and so I like that part. I just don't like how, say, if you are a senior competitor and you win the whole thing, you actually still aren't getting the most money. Yeah. So you have $200 you get, and then you have $500. So you get $700. Everyone else gets a $500, and then another. So if you are 18 plus or 18 and you win, you're going to get $1,000 if you win the overall. If you are senior, you get $700.
$700, yeah.
And
you know what though? Again, if you look at at professional sports, when they have the senior tour, the senior competitors do get a little bit less, right? So in that sense, I think it makes sense, because if you
think about it like this though, Andrew. Let's say it's like this, because exactly what Jeff was saying. All right, let's say, 30 plus competitor X. Like, who's there? All right, let's say Brian Rodriguez, because he's 35. Let's say Brian Rodriguez, he wins the 30 plus. Let's say he does that, and he gets $200 for winning that.
Yeah.
If he wins the overall, he gets $700. He gets $500 more. Let's say he beats Avery Plowden, and Avery Plowden won the open weight
and the heavyweight.
He already has 1,000, right?
He already has 1,500
for winning the open weight. And
if he won the heavyweight, he has $1,500.
$1,500, and Brian lost and wasn't even the overall winner. But in that scenario, Brian would win less than half.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I think it needs to be, and then also, why do the two seniors have to run off against each other to get one?
That part I disagree with. The way I look at it, those two seniors should be allowed to compete in it. That's my personal opinion.
Go straight in. There's no reason. Yeah. I mean, what's one extra form?
And that's the problem. That's a problem I had with the Diamonds, because when they first introduced the 30+ ring, it was all for forms and forms winners. And all of a sudden, 2017, where it was my best shot, 2017, where I believe it was my best shot to get in it, right? All of a sudden, they're like, oh, we're only taking the top one from male and female. I go, when did they change that, and why did they change that? When prior years it was all 4 grand,
all 4, which is fine
for the ring, right? So that I think needs a little bit more work. But like I said, the overall format of it, I do like, and I think
I like the concept, and I like it. I think it's really cool. I think there just needs. I just think it should just be 500 for everybody, or make it the same for everybody, and then go in there. If you want to give an extra, whatever. If you want to, you don't even have to do an extra. I mean, extra money is great, but like we talked before, that's where the diamond ring should be, or that's where the big award of the prestige should be. I mean, I think the extra money helps. Everyone wants that, but I just feel like there's certain things with that. They're just weird to me. Like even I just
noticed something with the women's
weight.
Fighting. The women's fighting doesn't have the 30+ competitor, unless I read that wrong.
That's the other thing we were going to talk about.
Oh, it doesn't?
So yeah.
No.
Okay.
That's why
that makes anything. So that makes no sense. So it has the
No, the 30. Yeah, I noticed that 30+ fighters are not included in that grand, but the 30+ male fighters are.
And so it's so weird, And then the other thing is, why include the open weight? That's a whole separate division. That's not even the same event.
That's not even a NASCAR division.
No, that's something itself. You're giving $1,000. That should be on its own. So you should have a 30+, the 40+, the lightweight, and the heavyweight, and have them go.
Yeah,
that way it makes sense, because it's the same realm. It's the same thing, especially in the fighting when you're only allowed to do one division anyway, right? So, especially since I've been pushing too. I don't like the way AKA does it. If someone wins open weight and the heavyweight, they give the runner up. No, I won both. Take that spot out. There's only 3 of us left. I get a bye. Have those 2 fight off, and then I fight the winner.
And that's the thing, is everybody thinks like it sounds great, like, all right, take the runner up, because nobody actually thought that runner up could win the whole thing.
Almost happened the last time.
Now it almost happened.
Yeah, with Oscar. Yeah.
Right. So then you're like, oh crap, what if this actually happens? Everyone's gonna be pissed. And a little bit justifiably so. So listen, NASCAR can't get out of their own way. They're stuck in the mindset of everything has to go to this, every competition has to go to this winner. It doesn't, right? Because you're introducing different divisions that aren't necessarily connected, and you're trying to connect them anyway. Right. So even with the open weight, just like you said, like Andrew, let the open weight be its own thing. And then let the divisions, let those ones.
Right. That's, make that be the thing. Yeah, because
if you just run those divisions,
right,
and just pay out the winner, and then if you want to do it, because everybody wants to kind of do it like Europe, because they're looking at that and they're like, listen, this fighting culture is all freaking amazing.
Yeah.
Right. And so they're kind of like, NASCAR's trying to appease a little bit to that, going, okay, we'll introduce an open weight, but then still like tying that into the rest of the tournament.
Like, the open weight is it's open weight is open weight. Like, that is a completely different division. This should be no different. Like, the open weight should not be part of that grant, right? Because it's just not a division. It's just a completely separate entity in itself.
Right. It's the format. Everything's different. This is based on weight classes that build your way up.
Yeah.
That is
open weight is basically a grand championship, but it's a division, right?
But it's random. It's not, even the way that this is set up is based on you fight your weight class and you fight the next weight class. It's you work your way up by weight. Open weight is my first fight at 139 under, maybe against a heavyweight.
Yeah,
it's just the way it is. Yeah. It's not the same mindset or anything. So I just think I like how it is. I like the setup. I like the concept. I think it's good, but I think there's things that need to be tweaked. And I feel like, especially since they dropped their money down, I feel like it's an excuse to keep the money at where it is.
I don't know. I have a feeling they're going to take things back up once everything gets back to normal. Like I said, I really do believe that this is going to be.
I've seen it in other leagues and on that, and just when it's time to bring it down, it's like, well, we're just going to keep it here.
Because here's why, Andrew. Here's why they're not going to. So let's say everything gets back to normal. and then now you have 2,000 competitors at a tournament. They're not just going to go, all right, let's double the money. People are already
because they're already coming anyway, right?
They're already there.
Yeah.
They're
So
already
now they can look at it and go, well, we have a reason to up it.
Here's the thing that
money like it is. Why am I just going to voluntarily just double the prize money? I don't need to do that.
Speaking of money, did you guys take a look at the new breakdown for the money? Did you notice anything about 50 plus?
Say that again.
I saw they added. Did they add a 50 plus or did they?
Okay, so 50 plus men's fighting has money, but the 50 plus forms and
Doesn't.
weapons don't.
Yeah,
Like why?
that makes no sense.
And I don't know if Drew Derek Bisbee's still listening in there, but 50 plus is the biggest forms and weapons division in the senior divisions.
It is.
They need something. I'm sorry, and that's why when Mike has his tournament in Toronto, I sponsor that division because I think those guys deserve as much money as the rest of the seniors.
Oh yeah.
That's why I put up 500 of my own money for the winner of that for the overall 50. Right, that's mine.
Yeah.
Like I go. Last year, the last one we had, John Kim won it. He went up against his wife, but I mean, at least they got on stage and they got money. And back, it was more than 30 plus. Right. So, like I said, that's something that needs to be worked on because it just doesn't make sense to me that the biggest divisions in NASCA happens to have no cash prize as their on their grants. Like that does not make sense to me at all.
No, exactly. Like you put the money where the, where you're getting it, from. So exactly. Yeah. They're pulling more competitors than any.
Yep.
So, yep. So, man, we've had a great discussion. We've kind of gone all over the place.
Yeah.
And what's funny, we kind of went in full circle because we talked about how back then when John and those guys come, it was only one division. Now we're kind of talking about where we are now, right?
Yeah.
And really, this was an NBL thing that NASCA adopted.
Mm-hmm.
NBL was one of the only ones that did multiple divisions and stuff. And that was the reason why it attracted me to try different things. Mm-hmm. NASCA started pulling from that and doing that. I guess for me, what was weird was they kind of still always, and they still are, still holding on to that one division mindset, even though they're doing multiples. Yeah. Because there are little different rules that they kind of do. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's still like, well, I still wish it was this way, but I know that we need to move this way. So it's kind of like
the multiple division stuff, especially like for traditional anyway, you weren't allowed to do more than one traditional form until 2013.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? That's something new. Even the whole thing about being able to do musical and extreme in one of each, that's fairly recent too. I think it's like 2010 or so.
Right. And I think at one point it was what was it? Like bladed and non-bladed and stuff. I think at one point you could only do one. Yeah, there was things like that.
Wait a minute.
I don't know what Carmichael's talking about. No way. He only made $300 per grand. You didn't get $1,000 back in '95.
Carmichael just said he only made $300 per grand.
Yes.
During his career.
No, that's true. Okay, so back in the '90s, I guess people didn't know that they had divisional money, right? So you won $100
right,
per
that's
division
right.
that you won, right? And then grand was only $300 for men's forms, and keep in mind there was only one grand. That was an overall grand, and it was only $300.
Right.
The one,
because they were matched. It was the same price as the men's fighting grants. Because back then the fighting grant was lightweight, middleweight, and heavyweight, and each one had 300.
You have to remember the $1,000 prize is something that's new as well. Okay, that only came out in 2010. No, 2010.
Well, 2010. Really, that came out 2000. The sparring 2000 was when that really came out. The $1,000 grants.
For fighting. For forms, it was the 1,000 came in 2010. Like forms never saw $1,000.
Okay, got it.
Wasn't there a few tournaments that did it like that though? Like
I don't think so. Not that I know of.
There
Not that I recall.
Yeah, I mean, I know in NBL it was 500 at some was 400. At one point it was 1,000.
Yeah, and NBL was anywhere in between 400 to 600, and then you had the Las Vegas tournament, which would give 1,000.
Right. Yeah, and they kind of went back and forth too. They switched their format many times to try to figure out what worked well, So, but like I know at Bluegrass they were giving away. I'm sorry, not Bluegrass, Dixieland. Sorry, Dixieland. They gave away 200 per division. So like I won musical and creative, and I got 400, and then they gave away 500 for the grands. So that was
I remember in the early 2000s NBL tournaments, they had divisional prize money. They were like, for different divisions, different amounts. Like there was like 500 for Japanese Okinawa, and I'm like, what?
Yeah. So
it wasn't even for grants; it was for the division. Like 500.
Yeah,
like,
because
wow.
they tried to kind of copy what they were doing at Super Grands and just do first and second place. Went again to get first and second place.
Yeah.
They did that one year in like 2001 instead of a Grands to see how that worked. And it was, I mean, it just wasn't the same with only had two people against each other. You know what I mean? So they went back to it in 2002. But some of the tournaments still had it as they were giving that divisional prize money while still having overall. So, but yeah. So guys, we kind of went all over the place, but look into stuff, dig deeper, find out about these guys, find out about the 80s, the night. Again, like John, Mike, none of these guys would be who they were without people like Charlie Lee, Stephen Ho, John Chung, John Fournette, Keith Hirabayashi, George Chung, all these guys, and females too, like Elsa Cordero and Cynthia Rothroth, Christine Rodriguez, all these.
Here's what they need to do, though. It's not just YouTube. This is where you guys got to reach out to Wally Faulkner, Black and Blue Videos.
Black and Blue Videos.
He was around everything. He's, you know what? He's my real one of the week.
There you go.
He's my real one of the week. Wally Faulkner. Because without Wally, how are these kids gonna know? Because if it's not on, if Wally didn't put it on YouTube, it might not be there. They're gonna have to go buy the DVD.
Yeah.
VHS.
Right. Yeah, and all of us got to get off our butts and start converting our videos if we haven't already.
I saw a milk crate that I had a bunch of VHS tapes of like stuff that like I personally videotaped.
Oh man!
I'm like, how am I gonna take this dinosaur archaic footage and put it onto something?
That's right. Oh man! All right, guys. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for commenting. Hope you enjoy. Listen to us. Well, if you're listening to us now, you're listening to us today on all the podcasts, but check out the podcast tomorrow too if you're watching us live on Facebook. So
don't forget to subscribe. Hit those it'll get you those notifications right away as soon as the episode comes out.
That's right.
This has been another episode of Inside Scoop with Alex and Jeff. I'm Alex Dingman.
I'm Jeff Doss. Thank you, Andrew Cabilan.